This is going to be interesting. Please listen. Listen up.
Had the wisdom, fortitude, and strength to do what everyone knows was right. I don't like people who use their faith as justification for doing what they know is wrong. Nor do I like people who say, I pray for you, when they know that that's not so.
Speaker Pelosi responding today with an attack against Mr. Trump's State of the Union speech for false statements and what she viewed as political stunts.
The president using the Congress of the United States as a backdrop for a reality show. The whole State of the Union was beneath the dignity of the White House. I have tried to be gracious with him. I'm always dignified. I thought that was a very dignified act compared to my exuberances, as I said. But we will not allow any president to use that Capitol, that chamber of the House of Representatives, of the People's House, as a backdrop for him. Now, all presidents have guests, constant guests. That was not a State of the Union. That was his state of mind.
When the president commands the microphone at the White House momentarily, Mr. Trump is also expected to resume his attacks against his political enemies, not only Pelosi, but also Mitt Romney, the first senator from the president's own party to ever vote for conviction and removal from office.
I've got broad enough shoulders to be able to weather personal changes in my career, political or otherwise. But what I don't have is the capacity to ignore my conscience. I don't have the capacity to say that what was wrong was not wrong. What the president did was grievously wrong.
Hardball host Chris Matthews is going to be joining us throughout the hour from Manchester, New Hampshire. Good morning, Chris. First of all, your reactions to the extraordinary developments today. There you are in New Hampshire as the primary start to elect the next president, and what we've seen is the existing president at the National Prayer Breakfast attacking his perceived political enemies, and Pelosi striking back.
Well, when a prayer breakfast becomes the equivalent of high noon with that kind of political firepower being displayed in the morning at a religious event, you know we're in trouble in terms of a divided government. There's no real word for this kind of government. The fact is the president's in a payback mode right now. We're seeing how he's acquitting himself. That's a good word for it. He is acquitting himself now. And I think Senator Collins, with her goodwill and covering her own vote not to vote to convict, is looking very out of it right now. This president is not on a road to recovery or repeal or change. He is going to go worse, it looks like, in terms of payback.
And when we think about how unprecedented this is, Bill Clinton in 19...
You know, it would be considered petty in ways towards what has went on out here of various individuals throughout the neighborhood rearing up because I decided to come back here and live on this property in 2014 at 291 Thompson Road, Sharon, Tennessee, zip code 38255. But because it's happening on a federal level with high-ranking officials, it's not considered something petty any longer, but it's considered unethical, unprofessional, ungrateful. And now I'm beginning to open up my eyes towards seeing that some of the things that the Speaker of the House either has done or said is, in fact, inappropriate, just as much on her behalf as it is his. So there has to be some sort of neutral grounds in compromising with each other, for each other, for the benefit and the betterment of the people. Because if not, this is going to be just like an abscess sore. And every time you pull the scab off of it, it's just going to re-scab up again and again and again and again and again. In other words, it's festering, it's festering, it's festering. It's not good for the people. It's not a good, solid, healthy environment. If anything, it has turned into just the opposite of a good, sound, healthy environment, to the degree that it has turned into a sick, perverted, abstract, toxic environment. And that's not what the American people voted these people in office to do. That's not what these American people wants out of their politicians that's considered high-ranking politicians. They don't want petty procedures or policies to be argued over, regardless whether one person believes that the other person is praying for that person. You know, they got a country song out. I'm going to play it to the Secret Homeland Security before long. I'll dig it up online. But they got a country song to where this guy is praying, but he's praying for everything in the world to happen wrong to his ex-wife or his girlfriend, towards having flat tires and hope she runs out of gas, and hopes this bad thing happens to her and hope that bad thing happens to her. So she can be praying, Mr. President. Now, whether or not she's praying for the benefit of you or not is another thing. Now, whenever I sent you the memo that I sent you this morning, I specifically told you what I was praying for. I'm praying for the safety and security of you and your family and your cabinet that works with you. I'm praying for the benefit of you, for the safety and security of you and your administration, as well as the safety and security of we the people. But now what God wants to do beyond my prayer is a completely different concept. But at least my frame of thought, my heart is in the right place towards I'm wanting to better your life rather than worsen it. Not like the country song of the individual that was praying, but he was praying that bad things happened to his ex-wife or his girlfriend. I'll find the song. That bad things was happening to her rather than good things. So yeah, you can be prayed for, but what is the meaning and behind the prayer is the $1 million question. Hopefully, she's praying that you will overcome the obstacles that you have to defend for the benefit of we the people. Hopefully, she's praying for your better health. Hopefully, she's praying that whatever decision that you make, that it will be for the benefit of the people. And hopefully, she's praying that you will accomplish things in a good manner rather than a bad manner. Hopefully, her heart is in the right place. But as I said a while ago, I'm beginning to see irregularities in both. In this squabbling and bickering and cat fighting. It's basically almost like a wife and a husband that knows that their relationship has went sour. And just like the individual said a while ago, whenever you have, 46 or 47 people that has voted towards basically saying that you're unworthy of being a president, you know good and well there's going to be conflict, there's going to be friction between now and the next 4 years of your term. In this year, there's going to be friction whenever you have 47 people in the House that has already declared publicly that they think that you're unfit to be the president of the United States. So what we're seeing here is this backbiting, he said, she said, quarreling, kind of like a love spat that has went bad. And if it was children, it may look cute in some people's eyes, but we're not talking about children here. We're talking about grown adults, and we're talking about people that's supposed to be up there working for the benefit of we the people, regardless whether it be the Republicans or the Democrats. They're supposed to be up there pulling in our favor to get things accomplished, to get things done, regardless whether it be from A to Z. And that's not what the American people are seeing. The people are seeing a stalemate. And I'm beginning to wonder if it's just as much on one party side as it is the other, towards it being just immaturity. Immaturity whenever it comes to this type of bickering back and forth, and I'm going to cut this one a little deeper than this one, and I'm going to criticize this one a little deeper than that one. And it's one thing, I mean, I believe in criticism too, don't get me wrong, because sometimes I criticize people, but I try to do it in a constructive way. And if it's put out there in a constructive way, criticism can actually be a very, very predominant entity that will help to stimulate or build the other person up if it's done in the right way. Talking about constructive criticism. But whenever you have criticism that is not constructive criticism, but now you're talking about negative criticism towards seeing how low that we can drop, how far can we stoop against the other person, of how further advanced can I declare this person a little lower than the other person, then you're looking at a sickness. Then you're looking at something that becomes toxic. Then you're looking at something that is unhealthy, not just for the two persons or the two parties, but now you're looking at something that is very, very unhealthy for the nation, for the benefit of the people. And I think that's what we're witnessing here, if we'll only come to realistical terms of just exactly what is happening. And it's become ugly. It's become ugly, and I've had other people tell me that this backbiting, this bickering, this jaw dropping has become ugly. And if it's become ugly, that means it's become toxic, it's become sick, it's become unhealthy.
99 coming into the Rose Garden and apologizing for the behavior for which he was impeached. We're not expecting any kind of apology. In fact, we're hearing from Stephanie Grisham, the White House press secretary, that he is going to talk about payback against his enemies.
You know, two things happened yesterday, and one was very tragic, and one was really wonderful.
If that's what his plans are, you know, whenever it comes to who's the biggest person in the room, going under the guidelines that Jesus taught towards turning thy cheek and offering thy other, instead of it being a positive, now you're talking about it being a complete, total negative, the opposite. And that's whenever it becomes very, very toxic and sick for the nation to have to experience something like this, because obviously we're dealing with people that has very, very emotional, passionate feelings about what has happened in regard to this. Maybe there's a possibility, for some strange reason, that President Donald Trump sincerely believes that he really didn't do no wrong. That's kind of like the people over in the Middle East that strap a suicide vest on their bodies and pull the cord that ignites the explosives on their body, that basically not only kills themselves but kills sometimes 2 or 3 other 100 people and injures up to 1,000, maybe 1,500 people in this type of event. You know, out of the sickness of those who does this, they claim that they're doing it all in the name of Allah, so that they can go home to live in heaven, to live out their remaining lives in the land of the glory, towards living with 99 virgins and drinking all the wine that they want to drink. Believe it or not, there really are people that have been sold out to this lawlessness behavior under the Sharia law, that are not only sincere, but they actually believe in what their cause is. They actually believe it. Which goes back to the concept that I have said before, and I'll say again, you can be sincere. You can be sincere enough that you're willing to take your own life. But just because you're sincere doesn't mean that you're right. You can be sincerely wrong, Mr. President. And we believe, in the eyes of the majority of the people, or a great deal of people, at least 47 out of the 100, believe that you was in the wrong in doing what you done with the Ukrainians, because obviously you created a stink. And engaging into the stink, it has resulted in a toxic environment. A very, very toxic environment. I don't know what's going on in another human being's life, in another human being's heart, in another human being's mind. Only that human being knows. Whether or not he or she is uppity up in regards to their sincerity, their true sincerity in the Lord. In the Lord. And I think that's where a lot of it stems from, is that a lot of people are sincere, and they say that they're sincere in the Lord. But if you're not sincere in the Lord to the degree that your works is lining up with your actions towards turning thy cheek, loving thy enemy, being that good Samaritan that's willing to go an extra mile, not just take my coat, but take my cloak as well. Whenever you're seeing these actions that are falling upon to another human being's life that are not lining up with Scripture, then one must start asking the question, okay, you are sincere, but are you sincere in a righteous type form? You can be sincere. You can be just as sincere or more sincere in an unrighteous form. Just like the sick individuals that think that putting on a suicide vest and dying for Allah over in the Middle East is the right thing to do. But you and I, or most of us know, that has any type of ability of thinking, knowing right from wrong, you and I know that those people that does that cannot be within their right frame of mind. Because Jesus himself said to be wise as serpents, but harmless as doves. And if you're harmful, either to yourself or to others, that is contrary to the Scriptures. It does not line up with the Scriptures. If you are promoting violence, either toward yourself or for your enemy, because that's not what the Scriptures talks about. Now, if you go back over into the Old Bible, into the Old Testament, oh, trust me, there was wars. Many, many wars that was fought of people thinking that their side was more or just as right as their opponent, to the degree that there was mass bloodshed. Massive bloodshed. Even during the 11th and 12th century, during the Great Crusaders, you had Christians that was acting in such of a behavior that was contrary to the Scriptures, but yet no, at the time that they was doing what they was doing, they probably thought that they was doing what they was doing in a righteous, right form. But you and I, today, looking at history as a spectator, can look and read and understand that those people that was doing those things back during that movement was in the wrong. They was in the wrong towards trying to force bloodshed upon the people in the name of Christianity. Just like it's wrong to bring bloodshed to the people in the name of Allah or any other affiliation or denomination. It's just as wrong towards people doing it then as it is people doing it today. So I'm not saying that the President of the United States is not sincere. He may very well be sincere in believing what he believes. that he didn't do nothing wrong. But just because you're sincere doesn't make it right. And only God, the holy, righteous God, knows what was actually in Donald Trump's heart, what was in Donald Trump's mind during the time that he decided to restrain precious aid going to one of our partners, one of our allies, that Congress had done already, sworn off that we was going to support and be right there with. And Donald Trump opposed their wishes. He defied Congress's wishes and took the law basically into his own hands by saying, I'm going to withhold this aid. Now, he can say that he's doing it in the name of corruption because of the Bidens. Because he didn't want to give away free money, basically giving good to bad. In other words, being too good for your own good. He can say that that was his motive. And that's fine. He can say it, but whether or not you want to believe it or not, it still has a great deal of skepticism in my heart and in my mind, because I'm skeptical that that was his true motive. I'm thinking that his motive may have very well been a perverted, polluted, selfish motive in wanting to defeat one of his opponents at the expense of jeopardizing the will of the American people. Only time will tell. Only time will tell, and I guarantee you, whatever was there, just like the Bible says, your sins will find you out. It don't matter if it's your sins about being sexually perverted. It doesn't matter if it's sins about being selfish, pertaining to your money. It doesn't matter if you're a thief. It doesn't matter if you're this or that or that or this. Eventually, your sins will find you out, including my own. And these are areas that I got to pray for every day in my life, to say, God, be merciful unto me as a sinner and help me, guide me, give me the strength, give me the desire to want to overcome all these ungodly fleshly desires to the point that I become even as your Son Jesus Christ was and still is, sitting up onto the right hand of God.
We lost Kirk Douglas. And the great thing about Kirk Douglas is he made great movies like Lonely Are the Brave and Spartacus. And he was as
Kirk Douglas was a good actor.
Courageous in his private life and professional life as he was on the screen, because he was the one who ended the blacklist in Hollywood by hiring Dalton Trumbull to write the screenplay for Howard Fast's Spartacus book. And so this kind of courage, and it took a lot by Kirk Douglas to do that, and for Mitt Romney to do what he did, I'm so glad that he was praised today in the LDS, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints newspaper in Salt Lake City, Deseret News. They praised his performance, his guts yesterday.
Me too.
And I think that's powerful stuff. I think we're living in a time where we do see cases of courage and of religious belief, and anybody who doubts the religious convictions of Mitt Romney's in trouble, because it isn't some political adventure for him. It's who he is long before he ran for office. And I thought it was wonderful what he said in Salt Lake a few hours ago about his dad, George Romney, who you and I both covered and saw as a political leader, and then how much his father lives within him in terms of courage and standing up for your beliefs. And I think it's a great day for America that a United States Senator could show that kind of bravery.
Right.
And Chris, I know you're going to be with us for the whole hour, but joining us as well right now, Weekend Today hosts Peter Alexander in the East Room, Kristen Welker at the White House as well, and we have New York Times Chief White House Correspondent Peter Baker, USA Today Washington Bureau Chief Susan Page, who's been covering Nancy Pelosi as well as everything else, and Washington Post Chief Correspondent Dan Balls.
Let's fast forward this real quick and get right on to what the president has to say. rather than listen to all these commentators.
A republic if we can keep it. For something our men and women in uniform fight to protect our freedom, our Constitution, and the aspirations of our children that depend on living in a democracy that is unquestioned in terms of that, where we have freedom of the press to be guardians of that democracy. So, I'm not very fond of commenting on anything they say, but if it's threatening, it's wrong.
And Peter Baker from the New York Times, you've literally written the book on impeachment. How different is this from what we all witnessed in 1999?
Well, I think Susan's right. Impeachment is not over. The vote has obviously been taken. The articles of impeachment are now a dead letter, but the battle is still to go. And what the difference is from 1999, and Andrea, you and I were there, and Dan and Susan, we saw not only did President Clinton come out and try to offer forgiveness or offer regret, for his own actions, and then forgiveness for his enemies. He was asked that by a reporter. Those who asked for forgiveness ought to be able to offer it, he said. And he wanted to move on, and so did the Republicans. That was the difference, right? Both of them felt like the impeachment had been a sour moment in the American life. The president wanted to move on from scandal. The Republicans felt they had suffered at the ballot box as a result. They had lost two speakers in the process. And so everybody at that point kind of wanted to move on and pretend it hadn't happened. I think that's the exact opposite here. Both sides still girded for battle. We're heading into an election year.
It is ugly. Anytime you go through a mudslinging contest, it gets ugly. And that's exactly what a lot of these impeachment trials turn into. It turns into a mudslinging contest. Who can throw the most mud on the other one towards blaming each other for the failures that has occurred? It's sad because we as a society, especially as an American society, we deserve better than that. And I think anybody that's a true 100% red-blooded American would tell you the same thing. We deserve better than this.
Here in which this will be resolved.
Falling far behind.
Well, I feel...
Yeah, 15 minutes behind. He was supposed to be speaking at 12 o'clock. Holding everybody up.
Past couple presidencies, but this is a packed room where the media is pushed into back, and it is flooded with some of the president's biggest allies, including some of the names who were included in the documentation about the handling of the president's dealings with Ukraine. Mick Mulvaney is here. William Barr, the Attorney General, is here as well. As we anticipate the president, we're getting a heads up that we've received what they call a 3-minute warning. I'm not sure exactly what that means. Traditionally,
Well, I think in 3 minutes, the president's going to come in the room. That would be my interpretation. And here he comes. Competing.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.
Hail to the chief.
Well, thank you very much, everybody. Wow. We've all been through a lot together, and we probably deserve that hand for all of us because it's been a very unfair situation. I invited some of our very good friends, and we have limited room, but everybody wanted to come. We kept it down to a minimum, and believe it or not, this is a minimum. But a tremendous thing was done over the last number of months, but really, if you go back to it, over the last number of years, we had the witch hunt. It started from the day we came down the elevator, myself and our future First Lady, who's with us right now. Thank you, Melania. And it never really stopped. We've been going through this now for over 3 years. It was evil, it was corrupt, it was dirty cops, it was leakers and liars. And this should never, ever happen to another president, ever. I don't know that other presidents would have been able to take it. Some people said no, they wouldn't have. But I can tell you, at a minimum, you have to focus on this because it can get away very quickly. No matter who you have with you, it can get away very quickly. It was a disgrace. Had I not fired James Comey, who was a disaster, by the way, it's possible I wouldn't even be standing here right now. We caught him in the act. Dirty cops, bad people. If this happened to President Obama, a lot of people would have been in jail for a long time already, many, many years. I want to start by thanking some of, and I call them friends, because, you know, you develop friendships and relationships when you're in battle and war, much more so than, gee, let's have a normal situation. With all that we've gone through, we've done, I think, more than any president and administration. And really, I say, for the most part, Republican congressmen, congresswomen, and Republican senators, we've done more than any administration in the first few years. You look at all of the things we've done. I watched this morning as they tried to take credit for the stock market from think of that. Let me tell you, if we didn't win, the stock market would have crashed. And the market was going up a lot before the election because it was looking like we had a good chance to win. And then it went up tremendously from the time we won the election till the time we took office, which was November 8th to January 20th. And that's our credit. That's all our credit. And leading up to that point was our credit because there was hope. And one of the reasons the stock market's gone up so much in the last few days is people think we're doing so well. They liked the State of the Union speech. Well, they liked the State of the Union speech. It really is. It's a true honor to give it. Making the State of the Union speech, I was with some people that have been around. They've been all over the world. And one of them said, highly sophisticated person said, you know, no matter where you go in the world, it doesn't make any difference. There is nothing like what I witnessed tonight. The beauty, the majesty of the chamber, the power of the United States, the power of the people in this room. Really an amazing, even I don't think there is anything like that anywhere in the world. You can go to any other country, you can go to any other location, any other place. It's the beauty of everything. It's what it represents and how it represents our country. I want to start by introducing some of the people that are here. I know some are going to be left out, but they work so hard. And this is really not a news conference. It's not a speech. It's not anything. It's just we're sort of, it's a celebration because we have something that just worked out. I mean, it worked out. We went through hell. unfairly, did nothing wrong, did nothing wrong. I've done things wrong in my life, I will admit. Not purposely, but I've done things wrong. But this is what the end result is. You can take that.
And you know, you can showboat, Mr. President, all you want. But we basically all knew before the hearings, before the testimonies, and before the trial, how that it was going to begin and how that it was going to end. We all pretty much so read through the tea leaves and thought, yeah, they're going to reprimand him. They're going to chastise him for doing what he done. But ultimately, the Senate is going to say that, yeah, what he done was wrong, but it wasn't wrong to the extent that he deserves to be impeached. That is in their mind's eye, and they have the right to make that determination. But once more, is that going to be the same determination that God makes ultimately? Because the Bible says, to whom much is given, much is required. And you was required to do the right thing in the eyes of not only the people, but in the eyes of the Almighty. As I said a while ago, the proof will prevail. It always does. And it always will.
Oh, money, maybe we'll frame it. It's the only good headline I've ever had in the Washington Post. I'll tell you. But every paper is the same. Does anybody have those papers? Does anybody have them? Because they're really like that, so I appreciate that. But some of the people here have been incredible warriors. They're warriors. And there's nothing from a legal standpoint. This is a political thing. And every time I'd say, this is unfair, let's go to court, they say, sir, you can't go to court. This is politics. And we were treated unbelievably unfairly. And you have to understand, we first went through Russia. It was all bullshit. We then went through the Mueller report. And they should have come back one day later. They didn't. They came back 2 years later, after lives were ruined, after people went bankrupt, after people lost all their money. People came to Washington to help other people. Bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, they say. They came, 1 or 2 or 3 people in particular, but many people. We had a rough campaign. It was nasty. It was one of the nastiest, they say. They say Andrew Jackson was always the nastiest campaign. They actually said we topped it. It was a nasty both in...
And to this day, I still don't like spending the $20 bill on account of what he done to the Native American Indians. To this day, it still disgusts me to look at a $20 bill.
The primaries and in the election. But you see, we thought after the election it would stop, but it didn't stop. It just started. And tremendous corruption. So we had a campaign. Little did we know we were running against some very, very bad and evil people with fake dossiers, with all of these horrible, dirty cops that took these dossiers and did bad things. They knew all about it. The FISA courts should be ashamed of themselves. It's a very tough thing. And then we ended up winning on Russia. It should have taken the one day, as I said, and it took years. Then Bob Mueller testified. That didn't work out so well for the other side. But they should have said that first week, because it came out. Is that right, Jim Jordan? They knew in the first 2 days, actually. Devin, is that right? 2 days. They knew that we were totally innocent. But they kept it going, Mark. They kept it going forever. Because they wanted to inflict political pain on somebody that had just won an election that to a lot of people was surprised. I mean, we had polls that said we were going to win. We had Los Angeles Times and a few papers actually said we were going to win, but it was going to be close. And we did win. It was one of the greatest wins of all time. And they said, okay, he won. And I wrote this down because that was where a thing called the insurance policy. To me, when I saw the insurance policy, and that was done long before the election, that was done when they thought that Hillary Clinton was going to win. And by the way, Hillary Clinton and the DNC paid for millions of dollars, the fake dossier. And now Christopher Steele admits that it's a fake because he got sued by rich people. I should have sued him too, but when you're president, people don't like suing. I want to thank my legal team, by the way, not for that advice, but for other advice. Pat, Jay, Pat, you guys stand up, please. Great job. Right at the beginning, they said, sir, you have nothing to worry about. All of the facts are on your side. I said, you don't understand. That doesn't matter. That doesn't matter. And that was really true. They made up facts. A corrupt politician named Adam Schiff made up my statement to the Ukrainian president. He brought it out of thin air, just made it up. They say he's a screenwriter, a failed screenwriter. He tried to go into, unfortunately, he went into politics after that. Remember, he said the statement, which is a mob statement, don't call me, I'll call you. I didn't say that. Fortunately, for all of us here today and for our country, we had transcripts. We had transcribers, professional transcribers. Then they said, oh, well, maybe the transcription is not correct. But Lieutenant Colonel Vindman and his twin brother, right? We had some people that really amazing. But we did everything. We said, what's wrong with it? Well, they didn't add this word or that. It didn't matter. I said, add it. They're probably wrong, but add it. So now everyone agrees that they were perfectly accurate. When you read those transcripts, Tim Scott, I don't know if Tim's here, but he said, sir, he's the first one to call me. Sir, I read the transcript. You did nothing wrong. And Mitch, he stayed there right from the beginning. He never changed. And Mitch McConnell, I want to tell you, you did a fantastic job. Somebody said, you know, Mitch is quiet. And I said, he's not quiet. He's not quiet. He doesn't want people to know him. And they said, is Mitch smart? I said, well, let's put it this way. For many, many years, a lot of very smart, bad in many cases, sometimes good, but people have been trying to take his place. And to the best of my knowledge, I've never even heard the subject come up because they've been wiped out so fast. This guy is great, and I appreciate it, Mitch. And he's also given us 191 now. 191 federal judges, 2 Supreme Court judges, right? We're up to 191. Yeah. Great guy. Great guy. He's a tough guy to read. I'm good at reading people. Tough guy to read, I'd call him. My wife would say, how'd you do with Mitch? I don't know. That's what makes him good, when you can read somebody. Fantastic job. And he understood right from this was crooked politics. This was crooked politics. How about all these people? They're running for office. They're saying the worst things about me, like 8 senators on the Democrat side. Most of them got wiped out. You know, they got 1% or less. Most of them got less. They decided to go home. Let's go back to California. Let's go back to wherever they came from. Let's go back to New York. How about that one? Our New York Senator, Gillibrand. Let's go back to New York after they get nothing. And then they take an oath that they will be fair, that they will be reasonable, all of the different things that they have to sign. They're not fair, but here's the beauty. So we have 4 left. They're saying the most horrendous things about me. It's okay, it's politics. And then they're supposed to vote on me. They're trying to replace me, and then they're supposed to be voting. So I think it's incredible. But so Mitch, I want to thank you very much, incredible. And you have some of your folks here, and they're incredible people. And they've been right from the beginning. And again, you're out of session. Unfortunately, I only told these folks, let's do this today. We did a prayer breakfast this morning, and I thought that was really good. In fact, that was so good it might wipe this out. But by the time we finish, this will wipe that one out, those statements. I had Nancy Pelosi sitting 4 seats away, and I'm saying things that a lot of people wouldn't have said, but I meant every word of it. But we have some of the folks that are going to be leaving right after this, and they work hard, and they did work hard. Bill Cassidy, Senator. Stand up, Bill. What a guy. Great man when I need to know about health insurance and pre-existing.
So it's a time for people to beat their chest and act like a bunch of apes. We won, we won, we won. But did he win? He won amongst his party at that particular moment. But later on, as more and more truth comes out, we are liable to find out that they're going around beating their chest and rattling their palms of their hands, glorifying one another. They're liable to find out just the opposite. And I hope, listen to me, I hope that not be the case. I hope that this is all authentic. There was a misinterpretation of what Mr. Trump done pertaining to holding up the aid. I hope that it was all a big misunderstanding so everybody can go back into their corners and go back to working for the American people. I hope that this doesn't continue to scab over again and again and again. That's what I'm hoping for the benefit of we the people. Not the benefit of one particular party over another, but the benefit to be able to work together in a solemn course towards the benefit of the people. Because that's the reason why the people put them in power to begin with. They don't put them in power so they can showboat. They don't want to put them in power so they can glory one another or be gloried in one another. They put them in power so they can work for the benefit of we the people. That's why they're hired. I'm not saying that occasionally from time to time that they shouldn't be rewarded or accommodated for their services, because they should, regardless of what side that you're on. But all this haggling and all this backbiting and all this snarling and all this cutthroating has turned into a very, very toxic, sick environment for the disbenefit of the people instead of the benefit of the people. And I'm pretty sure most people will agree with that statement.
Conditions and individual mandates. I call Bill, or I call Barrasso. We get those two guys, they know more than anybody. A man who just became a senator. He's a little bit like me. We have a couple of them. very successful guy in business, and he said, what the hell? I'll run for the Senate from Indiana. And he ran, and I saw him on television destroying his opponent in a debate. I said, this guy could win, and I got behind him. And Mike Braun, you have done some great job. Thank you very much.
And the reason why that I say that is because, according to the Bible, Satan is the author of confusion. He's out to kill, steal, and destroy. And if Satan can bring calamity, if Satan can throw a monkey wrench, if Satan can bring that much more confusion and disorder in our affairs, ultimately who wins? Satan does. The one that caused all the confusion. And you know who the ones that ultimately gets hurt? We, the people. The people who have hired the people to do a certain particular task, to do a certain particular job. Those are the people that ultimately get hurt. That's the reason why something like this is ugly. I mean, for them to commend themselves and thank themselves and pat themselves on the back, that's fine. That's fine, but it never should have drawn into all this to have begun with. And I'm still have my doubts about Donald Trump's true intent towards holding up that type of aid for that length of time over the Bidens. I still have my doubts, and maybe it's because the seed that has been planted, but I'm pretty sure that as things escalate and as truth comes dripping in, more and more truth, people will find out that the President of the United States right now possibly, I hope this not to be the case, but possibly should be apologizing to the American people right now, just like Bill Clinton apologized to the American people in 1999. You got to keep in mind, folks, that we're dealing with somebody that was a builder up in New York City that had already went through 3 or 4 different bankruptcies. He was well noted of being a shyster, towards shysting people out of money, various construction outfits up in New York City, because that was his way of cutting corners and coming back on top towards being stronger. In other words, he's a cheater. He's a manipulator. His whole concept of his character is stained just off of that and that alone before he ever even stepped into the arena of the politics. So because of what has occurred in his other career of being a investor or a builder, one has to put into the equation, okay, if he'd done these things in that part of his life towards trying to become on top, trying to become a successful person, do you think that those same human characteristics will follow even though he's changed occupations into being a politician? It does me. I would be a fool not to think that those same characteristics would not have followed him even through a different career towards being a politician.
And he was just talking in his regular voice. He's the roughest man. He's actually unbelievable, and I appreciate the letter you sent me today. I just got it. But he's got this voice that scares people. You know, people from Iowa can be very tough. We're doing very well in Iowa. But I'll tell you, Chuck Grassley, he's looking to call me. Well, you tell me, what did you say? Now, he wasn't being rough. That was just the way he talked. And that was when I think that was when Comey announced that he was leaking, lying, and everything else, right? He choked because he never heard anybody talk like that. You know, you should have gone. I wish you got angry. You could have gotten the whole ball game. He would have said, I give up. Chuck Grassley is an incredible guy. And a man who, he was running against a tough, smart campaigner. We learned how good she was, right? She was a great campaigner. In fact, by the end of the campaign, she was actually, I thought she was more for me than you were, Josh. I was worried. I saw her ads. She was saying the greatest things about me. And you know who I'm talking about. And I went to a great...
To my viewers, to my sincere viewers, keep in mind, this is all a rich man's game, okay? These are all multi-millionaires in this room. People that are professional swindlers. People that are professional talkers. People that can talk you into buying a rotten watermelon and convincing you before you get it home it's going to taste good. They are con artists whenever it comes to silver tongue talkers. They're good at what they do towards trying to convince other people that this is going to be the best thing since the creation of toilet paper. I'm just going to use that analogy. But that's what has got them where they are today towards them being smooth silver talkers. Now, let's get back to the people. What are you going to do for us? What about our health care insurance? What about all these other problems pertaining to our infrastructure and all these other issues that should have been addressed rather than spending all this precious time on an event that possibly could have been ignored or eliminated if you would have done the right things, Mr. Donald John Trump.
Place, Missouri, and I said, who do you have to beat her? And they said, well, we have 4 people. I said, let me see them. I got to interview people. Can you imagine? I'm interviewing people for the United States Senate. This is what I do. Where have I gone? But I love it. I love it because we're getting great people. The first one I met was Josh Hawley. After about 10 minutes, I said to the people, don't show me anybody else. This is the guy. He was the Attorney General, did a phenomenal job in the state, highly respected. And Claire McCaskill. So the theory was you couldn't beat her. Great campaigner. Remember the last campaign? She was going to be taken. She was always going to be taken out, and she wins. And people say, how did that happen? Didn't happen with him. But she got so friendly toward me.
I want to play this same video 6 months from now to the American people. I'm going to spread it back out to my viewers. And I'm going to let them re-listen to it once more again. Because this is just in the beginning phases of February. February, I think the 6th. 2020. The year of the election. But between now and 6 months from now, which will basically put us in the heat of July and August, pertaining to droughts, famines, floods, tornadoes, and yes, let's not take out of the equation not just the coronavirus, but the opioid crisis, as well as the AIDS crisis, as well as all the other medical crisisness that not only the American people but the world are suffering through right now. and all the other events pertaining to global environmental crises that this man is still in denial of. I'm going to ask you 6 months from now if you still believe by them getting on national TV and beating their chest and clapping their hands, building each other's ego up for what kind of a good job that we done pertaining to the battle that we have just won. If this was a deserving moment of time, or if this was just more wasted, more dilapidated, more precious resources that has been wasted in the interest of the American people, especially as the American people finds out more and more about the conversation, why it was said, who it was said to. Like I said, I have been micromanaging this from the get-go, going all the way back to the original testimonies begun before the hearings, of listening to various experts, and I have found out more about this country just within the past 90 days than I would have ever thought about towards taking a major history class. And if there is a silver lining to any of this, it has openly disclosed our democracy towards how we function as a society with other foreign countries. It has opened my eyes up towards how many people are engaged towards making high policy interest decision making in the interest of the American people, regardless whether it be Walmart taking on trade from other parts of the country, or it be us bringing in oranges from South America, Honduras, or bananas down in Brazil, or how many cars that we're going to receive basis how many telephones is available here in America. So let's wait as they're beating each other on the chest like a bunch of apes, congratulating each other 6 months from now, and see if we still stand in the same position that they're standing right now.
In fact, one of the ads I still have, I'm putting it in the archives as one of the best ads I've ever made. And she tried to convince people that we were best friends. But Josh ended up winning by 5 or 6 points. You were unbelievable. You were tough. And you are something. And one of the greatest supporters on the impeachment hoax was Josh Hawley. He was incensed, actually. I watched it. He was incensed at what they were doing and what they were saying. And those were the ones. You know, I had some that said, oh, I wish you didn't make the call. And that's okay. If they need that, it's incorrect. It's totally incorrect. And then you have some that used religion as a crutch. They never used it before. An article written today, never heard him use it before. But today, you know, it's one of those things. But, you know, it's a failed presidential candidate, so things can happen when you fail so badly running for president. But Josh Hawley, I want to thank you. You were right from the beginning. Man, did I make a good choice. Thank you, Jeff. Tremendous future. A man who is brilliant and who actually was deceived to an extent. It comes from a great state, Utah, where my poll numbers have gone through the roof, and one of the senators' poll numbers, and not this one, went down big. You saw that? You saw that, Mike? But Mike Lee is a brilliant guy. He's difficult. Whenever I sign bills, you know, we do sign a lot of legislation it's big and it's powerful, but it's sort of everybody has to approve it. And I see 99 to 1. 99 to 1. I say, Don't tell me who's the one. Is it Mike? Yes. And he always has a good reason for it, too, by the way. But he's incredible. And right at the beginning, he knew we were right, Mike. And I appreciate it very much. You're just fantastic. And say hello to the people of Utah and tell them, I'm sorry about Mitt Romney. I'm sorry. Okay? We can say that Mike Lee is by far the most popular senator from the state. But you've done a fantastic job, Mike, in many ways. In many ways. A young woman who I didn't know at all, but she's been so supportive, and I've had great support from other people in that state, and she's been so supportive, and she's been downright nasty and mean about the unfairness to the president. And Kelly Loeffler, I appreciate very much. Thank you. So, she saw it very early on. And we have, I don't know if we have other senators here, but we got a hell of a lot of congressmen. I'll go over them quickly, but they have also been, it helped when we won 197-0. That's got to be a first, Kevin, right? Is that like a first? The Republicans have this image. See, I say Democrats are lousy politicians because they have lousy policy. Open borders, sanctuary cities, they have horrible policy. Who the hell can win? Oh, the new policy is raise taxes. They want to raise taxes. All my life I wasn't in politics, but I'd say, if you're a politician, you want to say, we're going to lower taxes. They want to raise taxes. So they have open borders, sanctuary cities, raise everybody's taxes. Get rid of everybody's health care, 180 million people in the United States, and they're really happy.
Now, I don't know if what he's talking about right now, pertaining to taxes, if this is some sort of a propaganda machine, the Donald Trump propaganda machine that's spewing out what he's spewing out right now. I can't verify about the taxes. But what I can verify is that Mr. Romney got patted on the back by his own people, from his own state, by his own church, and other various areas that commended him for him standing up because of his convictions, because of his faith in God. Just the very opposite of what Donald Trump just got through saying about his home state. Now that I can verify, because I've sat here all morning and I have censored, I have surfed through the news, which I've become pretty good at here lately, towards news surfing. I have sifted through the news and I have gotten this independent interview from this one and this interview from that one, and I've listened to this one and that one and that one and this one, and from all indications, Mr. Romney has gotten more credit from his own home state than he has criticism. This man here did not just tell you that. He told you just the opposite. So you take that for what I just said and put it in the right perspective about all the other stuff that he's talking about as he's talking about it. Like I said, I'm not God. I can't go into that man's mind. I don't know what's in that man's mind or what's in that man's heart. I do know what his practices was before he ever become an elected politician. During the time that he was working up in New York City in the building communities of being an investor.
And we're going to give you a health care that's going to cost more money than the country could make in 30 years if it really does well. That's 1 year. So I've always said they're lousy politicians, but they do two things.
I hope he turns it around. I wish the best for Donald Trump and his family and his committee. I wish the best. I hope that he can turn this thing around on a dime, and I hope that everybody, not just the wealthy, not just the rich, but everybody can go back to being the good old USA.
They're vicious and mean. Vicious. These people are vicious.
And you're not, and you're not, and you're not.
Person. Nancy Pelosi is a horrible person.
And you're not.
And she wanted to impeach a long time ago when she said, I pray for the president. I pray for the president. She doesn't pray. She may pray, but she prays for the opposite. But I doubt she prays at all. And these are vicious people. But they do two things. They stick together. Historically, I'm not talking.
We're back into that mudslinging contest again, folks. Come on. What are we looking at here? We're back into not constructive criticism, but negative constructive criticism. It is a sickness. It is a toxic environment that is not good for the American people.
Now, they stick together like glue. That's how they impeached.
And y'all
because
don't?
They had whatever the number is, 220 people. So if they don't lose anybody, they'll be able to impeach anybody. You could be George Washington. You could have just won the war, and they say, let's get him out of office. And they stuck together, and they're vicious as hell. And they'll probably come back for more, but maybe not, because the Republican Party's poll numbers, Mitch, have now gone up more than any time, I think, since 2004, 2005. And you know what happened then? But in normal times, decades, you would call it. That was a little unusual time. It was for a very short period. The Republicans Party's poll numbers and Donald Trump's poll numbers are the highest I've ever had there. So maybe they were. It's no way to get your poll numbers up. It's not working. Because from my family standpoint, it's been very unfair for my family. It's been very unfair to the country. Think of it. A phone call. A very good phone call. I know bad phone calls. This is a phone call with many people. I think Mike Pompeo was probably on the call. Where's Mike? Mike Pompeo was on the call. Many people were on the call. I know that many people. They even have a print-eye. Bringing up an old favorite word of mine, the apprentice. They have a print-eye. They have people on these calls. And I know there are many, when I speak to the head of a nation, and they have many people on. I mean, also, do you think they're just, in the case of Ukraine, he's a new president. He seems like a very nice person, by the way. His whole thing was corruption. He's going to stop corruption. We even have a treaty, 2001, 1999. It's a treaty, signed treaty, that we will work together to root out corruption in Ukraine. I probably have a legal obligation, Mr. Attorney, to report corruption. But they don't think it's corrupt when a son that made no money, that got thrown out of the military, that had no money at all, is working for $3 million up front, $83,000 a month, and that's only Ukraine. Then goes to China, picks up $1.5 billion. Then goes to Romania, I hear, and many other countries. They think that's okay. Because if it is Ivanka in the audience? Is Ivanka? Boy, my kids could make a fortune. They could make a fortune. It's corrupt. But it's not even that. It's just general corruption. And the other thing is mentioned in the call.
And we've all known that. And we've all known that these politicians that go in power, supposedly for working for us, winds up working for themselves. Not just going back into the Bidens pertaining to what went on with Obama, but what has gone on through the past 3 or 4 or 5 administrations, all the way back to the Reagans. These people that get these links, they get these connections, and they get the benefits of them. And the next thing you know, they live like sovereign kings or queens the rest of their lives, and their whole families is taken care of. And they become multi-millionaires. Basically overnight. All on the backs of the American people. Which is very, very unfair to the American people. And no one's never disagreed with you there. No one has never disagreed with you there. And if that was your primary motive, of the corruption scam that occurred with the Ukrainians, then I personally owe you an apology, Mr. President. But as of right now, me, myself, and I'm speaking solely for myself and the Windmill Ministries, as of right now, we still have our doubts. We still are skeptical of what really went on, especially whenever the whole group voted out towards having witnesses and documents in this so-called trial, if that's what you want to call it, was a trial. We call it a cover-up. We call it a sham. We call it showboating. Because a true trial is going to have witnesses, it's going to have proof, it's going to have documents, and those things was never presented to the American people. They was never presented to the American people in the right format that they should have been presented to us in. And why? What was the reason in behind us not seeing all these witnesses and all these documents? So what other else are we supposed to believe? How are we supposed to feel other than feeling skeptical of your word? If the shoe was on the other foot and I was in behind the mic right now instead of you, would you not be looking at me, wondering the same things? Well, Dennis, how come you didn't allow? How come your whole party didn't allow for all these witnesses and for all these documents to come forth pertaining to the trial? Because in any other trial, they've always had proper support teams that brings out witnesses and documents of the truth. And trust me, folks, the truth will come out. It may not come out to the extent that it's going to be, what would be the right word? It's not credible, justifiable in doing anything about it now. But still, for the pleasure of soothing people's consciousness, the truth will come out. And I guarantee you, come election day, that's whenever the people will show their true identity towards how they truly feel about what has went on here. Because you have costed the American people. Somebody has costed. I don't know who yet. Not for sure. But somebody has costed the American people precious time, energy, and money pertaining to all this hokey-pokey stuff that has went on in front of a national audience.
Something that I've told Mike Pence, our great vice president. I would tell him all the time, and I told him when he went on the trip, because he was over there. He never mentioned anything about this when you had your meeting. It's a terrible thing, but I told Mike, I said, Mike, we're giving them money, and, you know, you're always torn about that, because we have our country to build, we have our cities to build, and our roads to fix. But we're giving them money. Tell me, why isn't Germany paying money? Why isn't France? Why isn't United Kingdom paying money? What?
Now, I agree with what he's saying right now. What he's talking about right now, I totally agree with. Somebody has given the farm away. And it was giving the farm away way before Donald Trump ever become president. What he's talking about right now, we totally agree with.
They're paying money. Why are we paying the money? Is that a correct statement, Mike? I say, find out what the hell's going on. And I told that to all of my people, OMB. I said, I asked that question. How much is Germany paying? Why isn't Germany paying? Why is the United States always the sucker? Because we're a bunch of suckers. But that's turning around fast. But it makes it harder when stuff like this happens. Because you want to focus. And you want to focus perfectly. Think what we could have done if the same energy was put into infrastructure, prescription drug prices. Think of what we could have done. And I'm now talking both sides. Think of what we could have done if we had the same genius, because it's genius. I will say it's genius on the other side, maybe even more so, because they took nothing and brought me to a final vote of impeachment. That's a very ugly word to me. It's a very dark word, very ugly. They took nothing. They took a phone call that was a totally appropriate call. I call it a perfect call, because it was. And they brought me to the final stages of impeachment. But now we have that gorgeous word. I never thought a word would sound so good. It's called total acquittal. Total acquittal. So I want to, if I could, real fast, just introduce a few other people. I have to start with Kevin. Man, did you do a job? Lucky you're there. Lucky you're there. Because it wouldn't have worked out. If you don't have the right people, I'll tell you, Kevin McCarthy has done an incredible job. And he loves his job and he loves his country. Tell you what, Mitch and Kevin, they love what they do. Now, Mitch wouldn't even tell you he liked it. Say, Mitch, do you like it? I don't know. He's the greatest poker player, right? Kevin will say, I love it, right? And I will say that you're going to be Speaker of the House because of this impeachment hoax. I really believe it. I really believe it. And I'm going to work hard on it. I'm going to try and get out to those Trump areas that we won by a lot. And you know, in 18, we didn't win. We just won 2 seats in North Carolina. 2 wonderful seats in North Carolina that were not supposed to be won. But I went and I made speeches and we had rallies and we did a great job and we won. We took 2 seats. Nobody writes about that. If we lost them, it would have been the biggest story of the year. But we're going to go. We're going to do a job and we're going to win a lot of seats. We're going to win a lot of seats. People are very angry that Nancy Pelosi and all of these guys, I mean, Nadler, I know him much of my life. He's fought me in New York for 25 years.
I just got off the phone a while ago speaking to Mr. Burns. Mr. Burns is the retired United States Marshal that basically planted the bomb in the back of my truck in 2009 while I was out in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, towards being on part of the smear campaign in regards towards bringing destruction into my personal property and bringing more destruction into my personal life as far as a smear campaign. I don't even think Mr. Burns even realizes the devastation that occurrence done even to this day. But I was talking about me possibly going back to Oklahoma City, Oklahoma on the 25th anniversary, which is coming up just within the next month or so, pertaining to him escorting me over to the celebration, if you want to call it a celebration. I still call it a memorial of what actually occurred 25 years ago pertaining to the bombing in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. I asked him, I said, what do you think about that? His reply was, Dennis, there's not enough money that you could pay me to help to escort you over into that area. And he asked me, he goes, why would you want to go? He goes, if you want to go to the memorial, why would you want to go during the time that so many people are going to be in the middle of a celebration? I go, well, first of all, I was banned from that memorial. And as far as I know, I'm still banned from that memorial. I go, secondly, there has never been any type of acquittal in my life towards trying to validate the whole primary purpose for me being out there was to bring transparency of the truth towards what occurred 25 years ago. I wasn't out there to bring harm and hurt into people's lives. I have never been what would be the right word, justified in my actions towards me ever going out there to begin with. He goes, do you really think that they're going to try to acquit you or validate the whole purposes for you being out there? He goes, if they're going to do anything, they'll launch on you, and they'll attack you, and they'll implant something on you, and make up all kinds of lies about you that will help to validate their story versus yours. And I told Mr. Burns, I go, well, do you really think that if I do decide to go out there, that I'm going to be going out there naked, pertaining to me not having lawyers and me not having listening and documentation devices? I go, if the truth be known, if I do go out there, I'm going to be documenting them more so than they're documenting me, because I'm going to have stuff all over that truck with hidden cameras and listening devices towards whatever anybody was to say or do. In addition to me having witnesses and attorneys that would be keeping up with every move that I made if I did decide to go out there to try to get vindicated of that in which what I done in 2009. I've never been vindicated. Never. Never been vindicated. I realize the word that I use towards being acquitted is the wrong word. That's truly a legal word. But I've never been vindicated pertaining to a group of people that wanted to smear and destroy my character simply because of me being out there trying to discover the truth. And to this day, I still got people. Even though all these other news entities, since 2009, since the documentary come out about the Noble Lie, you've got now a flood of information, these theorists that has brought up their own theory about what had occurred and how it occurred. There has been now a flood of material that has been brought out to the American people, especially the Oklahomians, the Sooners, since then. So if I have done anything, my words have proven to be right once more again towards turning Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, upside down in being a whistleblower, in telling the American people the truth about how that there was, in fact, a major cover-up that occurred during the Timothy McVeigh and the Nichols bombing that took place in 1995, which would be 25 years that we're fixing to walk off into the anniversary of. But he basically said this. He said, I was out there working in security a few years ago when Donald Trump was out there politicking. Somebody had done something that was inaccurate or not proper, and I was told to remove him. Because I didn't grab the person up by the hair of the head and jerk him out of his seat and get